I never planned to fall for a guy like that. He was loud, athletic, kind of a show-off, the kind of guy who always had an entourage, who everyone somehow knew, even if you didn't go to the same school. I, on the other hand, was the quiet one. A little awkward, more comfortable behind a laptop than in front of people. But that summer changed everything. It started because of a broken air conditioner. My apartment's unit gave out during the first real heat wave of June. I live in one of those older buildings where central air is more of a dream than a reality. My landlord, a guy named Pete who thinks duct tape can fix anything, basically told me to open a window and deal with it until Monday. It was Thursday, so I did what any desperate, sweaty, overworked guy would do. I packed a bag, grabbed my laptop, and headed to my friend's place across town. Josh, bless him, was out of the country visiting his girlfriend's family in Greece, and he told me weeks ago that I could crash at his place if I ever needed to. He even left me a key. The building was nicer than mine, one of those recently renovated two-story places with a shaded courtyard and huge windows. I let myself in, dropped my bag, and marveled at the working AC blasting through the vents like it was a luxury hotel. And that's when I met him. Nick. Josh had mentioned him once or twice. His upstairs neighbor, used to play college soccer, kind of intense, but cool if you get to know him. I hadn't thought much of it. I figured we'd maybe pass in the hallway or not at all. But no. The first night, around 10 p.m., I heard a knock. I opened the door, and there he was, sweaty, shirtless, and holding a basketball under one arm. "Hey," he said, "you're not Josh." "Nope," I replied, trying not to stare too hard. "I'm crashing here for a few days. A sea broke at my place." He squinted. "Right. Josh said someone might use the apartment." He stuck out a hand. "Nick." I shook it, trying not to react to how warm his palm was. "Eli?" He nodded once. "Cool. You good here?" "Yeah, totally. Thanks." He gave a half smile, more polite than friendly, then turned to head upstairs. I thought that'd be it. But the next night, it happened again. Same time. Same knock. Except this time, he was in a tank top, holding 2 bottles of beer. "Thought you might want one," he said, offering me the second bottle. I stepped aside. "Come in?" He hesitated for a second, then nodded. "Sure." We ended up sitting on the couch, a game playing on mute in the background while we talked. At first it was small stuff. How we knew Josh, where we worked, how brutal the heat had been. But then the conversation kept going. He told me about getting injured his senior year and how it derailed his shot at going pro. I told him about switching majors 3 times in college before finally landing in UX design. He laughed at that. Said he used to think UX was just code for guys who couldn't code. "Not wrong," I said, and he grinned. It was easy, more easy than I expected. Nick had this way of sitting back with one arm draped across the back of the couch, eyes scanning the room like he was always half watching something. But when he looked at me, actually looked, it was like the rest of the world dimmed a little. "I don't usually do this," he said at one point. "Do what?" "Hang out with people I barely know." "You brought me a beer," he smirked. "I was curious." I raised an eyebrow. "About what?" He shrugged. "You." That made my stomach tighten in a way I wasn't ready for. And that was the beginning. We didn't see each other every day that week, but we kept bumping into each other. Sometimes by accident, sometimes not. A shared lunch, a quick wave from the balcony. One time, I found a Post-it stuck to the door that said, "You still alive in there? -N." By the 4th night, we were watching movies together on Josh's couch, legs touching, beers in hand. He didn't try anything, neither did I. But something was happening, and I wasn't sure if I should lean in or run the other way. The next night, he brought over dinner. "I figured you're probably living on string cheese and iced coffee," he said, holding up 2 takeout containers like it was a peace offering. "Wrong," I said, stepping aside to let him in. "I had peanut butter toast too," he grinned. "Fancy." We ate on the floor, sitting cross-legged around Josh's coffee table, the kind of meal that somehow felt more intimate because it wasn't supposed to be. He talked about his job, some kind of part-time coaching gig at a youth center, and I told him how I'd spent the day redesigning a client's homepage that looked like it hadn't been updated since 2008. "I hate that era of design," he said. "You know anything about design? I dated someone who did." It wasn't the first time he'd mentioned an ex, but it caught me off guard. I must have made a face, because he added, "Relax, she was nice. And no, I'm not one of those guys who brings up their ex to make a point." "Okay," I said. "So what point are you making now?" He paused for a beat, looking at me with something unreadable in his eyes. "I'm just saying," he said, slower this time, "I like people who care about what they do, that's all." I didn't know what to say to that, so I nodded and took another bite of rice. We watched something afterward, a documentary, I think, but neither of us really paid attention. I was aware of him the whole time. The way his leg brushed mine, how his fingers drummed quietly against the couch cushion, the way he'd glance at me, then look away. When the credits rolled, he didn't move to get up. "You always this quiet?" he asked, glancing over at me. "I'm not quiet," I said. "You just talk a lot." He laughed. "That's fair." Then, without really thinking about it, I asked, "Do you always hang out with random guys who sleep in your neighbor's apartment?" He looked at me. For real this time. "No," he said. "Just you." The air changed. Not in a dramatic movie scene way, but enough. I don't know who moved first. Maybe we both did. 1 second we were sitting there, side by side, and the next. His hand brushed mine. It was subtle, like he wasn't sure if he was doing it on purpose, like he wanted to give me a chance to pull away. But I didn't. I let his fingers rest against mine, let them stay there while the credits finished rolling and the screen faded to black. "You okay?" he asked softly. "Yeah," I said. "You?" He nodded, barely. We didn't kiss. We didn't even move closer. But something settled in that space between us. That night, he stayed later than usual. Didn't leave until close to 1 a.m. When he finally stood, stretching like he'd forgotten how to move, he looked down at me and said, "You want to come upstairs tomorrow?" "To your place?" He shrugged. "I've got a rooftop." "Better view," I smiled. "Sure." He lingered at the door for a second too long, then he left. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept replaying the moment his fingers touched mine, how easy it felt, how terrifying it was to want more, and that maybe, for the first time in a long time, wanting more didn't feel completely impossible. Nick's rooftop wasn't what I expected. It wasn't some sweeping skyline view or a bougie setup with fairy lights and a fire pit. It was simple. A flat gravel roof with a couple of mismatched chairs, a cooler, and an old speaker with a busted antenna. But the view? That soft pink-orange kind of sunset where the city looked quiet for once, even though you knew it never really stopped. He waved me up around 7. I brought drinks, he brought chips, and we sat in silence for a while, legs stretched out, music low. "You always come up here?" I asked, watching him take a slow sip from his beer. "When I need air," he said, "or when everything feels too loud." I looked over. "You seem like someone who doesn't mind loud." He gave a half smile. "That's the trick." We didn't talk much at first, just watched the sun dip behind the buildings and listened to the occasional buzz of traffic below. He kicked off his sneakers and leaned back in the chair like he'd done this 1,000 times before, but I noticed the way his knee kept bouncing. Nervous energy. Mine wasn't any better. I'd barely eaten all day. My stomach was too full of questions I wasn't ready to ask. At one point, he leaned forward to open the cooler again, and his shirt lifted just enough for me to catch the curve of his lower back, a little freckle near his waistband. I looked away fast, but not fast enough. "You always this polite?" he said, not looking at me. "What?" Not staring, not asking stuff. I laughed, caught. I didn't think we were at the asking stage yet. "What stage are we at?" he asked, finally looking over. I swallowed. "I don't know," I said. "The almost stage?" He nodded. "That sounds about right." Another long silence. Then he said, "I didn't think I'd like you." "Thanks." I deadpanned. He chuckled. "I mean, I thought you'd be uptight. Or shy. Or boring. And now?" He shrugged, still figuring it out. I looked at him. really looked. He had this little line between his eyebrows that only showed up when he was trying to act casual and failing. His lips were slightly chapped. His jaw was clenched a little too tight for someone drinking on a rooftop. "You're not used to this, are you?" I asked. "To what?" "Liking someone without a script." He didn't answer, just looked away, eyes on the horizon. Then, after a long beat, he said, "It's not the liking that's new, it's the letting myself." That hit harder than I expected, and I didn't know what to say. So I reached into the cooler, pulled out another drink, and handed it to him. Our fingers touched, just briefly, but this time I didn't look away. He met my eyes, held them, and then, slowly, cautiously, he leaned in. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't fireworks. It was just careful. His lips brushed mine like he was testing the air, soft, hesitant, real. I kissed him back, once, twice, then pulled back just enough to whisper, "You sure?" He nodded, eyes still closed. "Yeah." And that was it. We didn't make out on the roof. We didn't tear each other's clothes off. We just sat there, side by side, not talking, letting the silence hold all the things we weren't ready to say yet. That night, as we packed up and walked back down the stairs, he reached for my hand without thinking, and I let him take it. No one saw. But I felt everything. The next day felt weird. Not in a bad way, just different. Nick texted me mid-morning. "You up?" I replied, "Barely. You?" "Come up for coffee?" I hesitated. Mostly because I looked like hell. Sweatpants, bedhead, the works. But I texted back, "Give me 10. He didn't say anything else, just sent a thumbs up emoji. I ran my hands through my hair, splashed water on my face, and threw on a t-shirt that didn't smell like sleep. My heart was racing like we were meeting for the first time again. When I knocked on his door, it opened almost immediately. He stood there in gym shorts and a hoodie, hood down, hair damp, coffee mug in hand. "Hey," he said, "hey." I stepped inside, and just like that, something shifted. He didn't hug me, he didn't kiss me, but there was this new layer in the air, like we'd unlocked something we couldn't put back. He poured me a mug and handed it over without a word. We stood in his kitchen, leaning against opposite counters like we were waiting for something to start. "You sleep okay?" he asked. "Not really," he nodded. "Me neither." We didn't say much more than that, but his eyes kept drifting over to me, like he was trying to read something on my face I wasn't ready to say out loud. Eventually, I sat on his couch, and he joined me, stretching out next to me with a lazy sort of ease. His foot bumped mine. He didn't move it. "Last night wasn't a mistake, right?" he asked. "No," I said without hesitation. "Good." He turned on the TV but didn't really watch. Some crime show played in the background while we both sat there, shoulders touching now, the way people do when the excuses for distance have finally run out. At one point I looked over and caught him staring. "What?" I asked. He gave a small shake of his head, a tiny, private smile playing at the corner of his mouth. Nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was everything. Later that afternoon, he came down to Josh's apartment while I was mid-Zoom call with a client. I gave him a quick wave to say, "One sec," and he just sat quietly on the edge of the couch waiting for me to finish. When I ended the call, he nodded toward my laptop. "You always sound like a different person when you're working." "How so?" "Confident, direct, like you know exactly what you're doing." "I kinda have to be," I said. "That's the deal." He nodded. "It's hot." I blinked. "What?" He looked at me, eyes soft but steady. "It's hot, watching you like that." I don't think anyone's ever said that to me. And I don't think I've ever blushed faster. He laughed, leaning back, like he knew exactly what effect he had on me. I threw a pillow at him. He caught it. Then, still holding it in his lap, he said, "I keep thinking I'm going to screw this up." "Why?" "Because I like you, and I'm not used to liking someone I actually respect." I sat down next to him, closer this time. "You're not going to screw it up," I said quietly. Unless you try to. He nodded again. Then, like it was the most natural thing in the world, he leaned in and kissed me. Deeper this time. Slower. Like we had time. And maybe we did. When we finally broke apart, I said, "You should probably head back upstairs." "Why?" "Because if you stay, I don't think I'll get any work done." He raised an eyebrow. "You saying that like it's a bad thing." I laughed. "It's not. It's just true." He stood slowly, but before he left, he leaned in again. One more kiss, soft and warm. Then he pulled back, grinning. "I'll come back tonight," he said. And he did. He started spending the night. Not every night, not in any official way, but enough that I stopped being surprised when I'd wake up and hear him in the kitchen, humming off-key while making terrible coffee. The first time he stayed over, we didn't even sleep in the bed right away. We were watching something stupid on Josh's couch, some show neither of us really cared about, and before I realized it, I'd fallen asleep with my head on his chest. When I woke up around 2 a.m., he was still there, arm around me, eyes half closed. "You want to go to bed?" I whispered. He mumbled, "Nah, you're warm." And that was that. The next morning, he brushed his teeth with his finger and used my mouthwash like he'd been doing it forever. It felt weirdly domestic. Too easy. Like we were skipping steps. But I didn't hate it. In fact, I kind of loved it. One night, maybe a week after the rooftop kiss, we were lying in bed in that in-between space. Quiet, mostly dark, the fan spinning overhead. He was on his back, one hand behind his head, the other resting lightly on my hip. I was curled into his side, tracing slow, thoughtless circles against his chest. "I've never done this before," he said softly. "Done what?" "This. Stayed. Wanted to stay." I didn't say anything. I didn't know how. He kept going. It always used to be about the chase, you know? Get in, get off, get out. But this feels different. "It is," I said. He looked down at me. "You're not going to ask me what it means?" "Nope." "Why not?" "Because I think I already know." He exhaled, long and slow. "Scary, huh?" "Yeah," I admitted. "But good scary," he said. "Like a roller coaster, not a horror movie." That made me laugh. I shifted closer, resting my head against his shoulder. His hand moved to my back, warm and steady. "You ever think about what happens after this?" he asked. "After what?" "This summer. You going back to your place, Josh coming home." I had. Too much. But I didn't want to say that. Instead, I asked, "You?" "All the time." Another pause. "I don't want this to be just a summer thing," he said. I looked up. "You don't?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He shook his head, then looked at me like he needed me to believe him. "I don't want to wake up without you." And that? That wrecked me a little. Because I'd been trying not to want the same thing. Trying to tell myself it was casual, temporary, something born of proximity and heat and chance. But it wasn't. Not anymore. Not for me. So I said it. "I don't want to wake up without you either." And we didn't. Not that night, not the next, not for a while. The heat finally broke the second week of July. Josh was due back in 5 days, and the thought of packing up and going back to my stuffy, noisy apartment made my chest feel tight in a way I didn't expect. Nick hadn't said anything about it. Neither had I. But the countdown was quietly ticking in the background of everything we did. That morning I found him in the kitchen, shirtless, pan-frying eggs in my skillet like he'd been doing it forever. His hair was sticking up at the back. There was a little bruise on his shoulder I didn't remember giving him. He looked over and smiled. "Morning." "Morning," I said, walking up behind him. I wrapped my arms around his waist without thinking. He leaned back into it, didn't even flinch. And for a second, I imagined this being our life. Waking up together, making breakfasts, pretending we had nowhere else to be. But it wasn't our life, it was borrowed. I sat on the counter while he cooked, scrolling half-heartedly through my inbox. My landlord had finally replied to my AC request, saying the unit was replaced and ready. "Looks like I'll be heading back soon," I said casually. Nick didn't look up. "Yeah?" "Yeah. Josh gets back Friday." He nodded, flipping an egg with the kind of focus that made it hard to read his face. "I could help you move your stuff back," he said. "You don't have to do that." "I want to," he replied, still not looking at me. That should have been reassuring. But it wasn't. Because I realized something in that moment. He wasn't saying what he actually wanted. Later that day, I went upstairs to his place. He was stretched out on the couch, phone in hand, absently thumbing through some playlist. "Nick," I said, standing in the doorway. He looked up. "Do you want this to keep going?" I asked. "After I leave?" He blinked. "What?" "I mean, do you want us to keep doing this, or was it just about the convenience?" He sat up slowly, like the weight of the question was physical. "You think this is about convenience?" I shrugged, trying to stay calm. "You've never said what you want. You never asked." "I'm asking now." He rubbed his hands over his face. "Shit." I waited. He stood, started pacing a little, then finally stopped and looked at me. "I didn't think I'd feel like this," he said. "I didn't think I'd care this much." "You do." "Yeah," he said. "I do." I crossed my arms. "Then say it." "I want you," he said quickly. "Okay, I want this. I want you." That should have been enough, but it wasn't. "Then why do I feel like you're still holding back?" He looked away, and that's when I realized he was scared. Not of me, of what this meant. So I said, "If this is too much, just say so. I'll go. We can leave it here. Good memories and all that." "No," he said, too fast. "Don't do that. Then tell me what you want." He walked up to me slowly, stopped when we were inches apart. "I want you to stay," he said. "I want to fall asleep next to you in your own bed. I want to know what it feels like to miss you and still have the option to come over." I swallowed. "I want to not be afraid of what this is," he finished, voice lower now. "Even if I'm still figuring it out." That landed hard. I didn't say anything. I just stepped forward and kissed him. Deep, slow, certain. When we pulled apart, I said, "Okay." And that was the moment everything shifted. Not in some dramatic, cinematic way. Just honestly, like we finally stopped pretending we weren't already all in. Josh came home on a Friday afternoon. I'd cleaned the apartment twice, packed my stuff, and was halfway through writing a thank you note I'd probably never send when I heard the front door open. "Yo!" Josh called, wheeling his suitcase in. I stood, trying not to look like I'd just been caught doing something wrong. But Josh didn't seem surprised to see Nick lounging on the couch with his feet up. "Oh, hey," he said casually. "Guess you two met," Nick grinned. "We've hung out." Josh raised an eyebrow at me. "You okay with me being back?" "Yeah," I said. "It's your place." Josh nodded slowly, then glanced between the two of us again. "You guys look different." "Different how?" Nick asked. "Like you're trying not to touch each other in front of me." We both laughed. I felt my face flush. Josh smirked. "You don't have to hide it, man. I'm not blind." Later that night, after I'd moved my stuff back to my place and showered off a week's worth of nerves, Nick showed up at my door with 2 beers and a look I hadn't seen before. "Hey," he said, handing me a bottle. "You good?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. "I just didn't want tonight to feel like a goodbye." "It's not." He nodded, stepping inside. It wasn't fancy. We didn't have a rooftop. My place still smelled a little like paint from the maintenance guys fixing the AC. But when he sat on my couch, my old sagging couch that no one ever wanted to sleep on, it felt different. It felt like ours. That night, he didn't go home, and not just in the physical sense. We made dinner together, clumsily, burning the toast and laughing when the smoke alarm chirped. He kissed me against the fridge. I kissed him back with my whole chest. Later, in bed, under my sheets, in my room, he curled into me like it was the most natural thing in the world. And just before we drifted off, he whispered something I almost didn't catch. I don't want to do this halfway. I opened my eyes. Do what? This. You. Us. I turned toward him. You're not. He nodded against my chest. The next morning, he left a toothbrush on my sink. No big speech, no ceremony, just a quiet thing left behind. And that's how I knew he was staying. Not just for the night, but for real.